So in this lesson, I want to cover off on some common chord progressions, especially ones that are used in jazz. Now, much like the blues and the 12-bar blues, jazz has sort of very commonly used standard chord progressions, which you can find in a lot of songs. Some of the chord progressions might use extended chords or chord substitutions, but if you sit down, you'll find that a lot of chord progressions, when you sort of get rid of all the substitutions and extensions at their very sort of bare bones level, use really widely known and widely used standard chord forms and chord progressions. Alright, so let's begin. The first one I'm going to cover is the standard 12-bar blues. Now, this is used a lot in jazz, and I covered it in detail in the advanced blues piano lessons series that I made. But I'm just going to do a quick recap of the standard 12-bar blues chord progression. For a jazzed up version, check out my jazzed up 12-bar blues progression video. So it's C in the key of C, C for 4 bars, F for 2 bars, C for 2 bars, G for 1 bar, F for 1 bar, and then C for 2 more bars. So that's 1, 4, 1, 5, 4, 1 in terms of the chords that you're using. So that's all I'm really gonna say about the 12-bar blues, because as I said, I have covered it extensively in my blues piano lessons. So have a look at those if you're interested. So the next one I'm going to show you is a 1-7-6-5. So just going down one note at a time in the minor key. So from starting on A minor, it goes A minor, G major, F major, then E7. And you can expand that to A minor 7, G7, F7, E7. And this is the chord progression for songs like Hit the Road Jack and Why Don't You Do Right. So they're two fantastic songs, go check them out. So essentially it goes like this. So that's quite a widely used chord progression. So the next chord progression I'm going to show you is effectively the circle of fifths. And if you don't know what that is, check out my lesson on the circle of fifths, because it's really important and it's a really widely used idea in music. It's essentially, if we stay in the key of A minor, you're going down in fifths. So A minor, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down to D minor, down another 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to G major, because we're staying in the key of A minor, and so on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down to C. So it sounds like this. And songs that use this progression are things like Fly Me to the Moon, or Autumn Leaves, right, that's all the cycle of fifths. Also for a pop song that uses that chord progression, You Never Give Me Your Money by the Beatles. Also the circle of fifths. Now if you take the circle of fifths and you cut it down to sort of just portions of it, to look at just a couple chords rather than the entire circle of fifths, you get also really common chord progressions like a 2-5-1. So to D minor 7, to G7, to C7. That's used a lot in jazz. And that's effectively just 3 chords in a cycle of fifths. Again, if we're starting on the D, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down to the C. And you can sort of keep going with that, work backwards. Starting on the E, going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the G, and then to the C. So that's also a really common chord progression that's used. That's just a sort of a fragment of the circle of fifths, and that's a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1. And you hear that everywhere in jazz as well. Next chord progression I'm going to show you goes like this. So essentially that's E minor, or on any minor key, but I'm going to play it on E minor, with the E at the bass, then E minor with a E flat in the bass, E minor with a D in the bass, and E minor with a D flat in the bass. So you're playing the E minor chord at the top here, exactly the same, and then C7, B7, back to E minor, and that's a little turnaround. That's effectively a 2-5-1 turnaround, but with the 2 being tritone substituted. If that didn't make sense, don't worry, that wasn't important, but you can check out my lesson on chord substitutions, and then that might make sense, a bit more sense anyway. Another way to think about that is if you move the bass to the top, you get an E minor chord, then an E minor major 7, followed by an E minor 7, followed by an E minor 6, and then so songs that use that chord progression are My Funny Valentine, varies a bit there, but you get the general idea. And a song which I really like, it's called Lover Lies by the Atomic Fireballs, and it sort of goes like this in the key of E flat, but same idea. Right, so that's a really good one to know as well. Another chord progression, which is essentially the classic jazz chord progression that every jazz musician knows, is the I Got Rhythm chord progression. I Got Rhythm is a song by George Gershwin, so have a listen to it if you haven't heard it before. But essentially, the first 4 bars go as follow in the key of C. So that is effectively 1, 6, 2, 5. So C major, A minor, D minor, G7. And the 1, 6, 2, 5, again, is just a fragment of the circle of fifths progression. So the A minor to D minor to G7 to C is just the last bit of the circle of fifths progression. And there are literally thousands of songs that either use that chord progression or a really similar one where the D minor, the 2, is substituted for an F major, or the 4. So then you'd get and really that's the same chord progression, just with a substituted chord, the F major instead of the D minor. And again, that's a really commonly substituted chord, and if you haven't watched my lesson on chord substitutions, go back and watch it and I explain why. But essentially that chord progression is the rather well-known song of Heart and Soul. And so on. And really really the chords 1, 4, 5 and 6 can be played around in whatever order you like, and you'll get some kind of chord combination that's quite widely used in pop. Like, for example, if we go 1, 5, 6, 4, then we have... Let It Be. Or that same chord progression. Is Don't Stop Believing by Journey. So really, if you know all of those, you're already pretty well across a lot of different songs, both pop songs and blues songs and jazz songs. And you'll start noticing them everywhere, effectively. Almost every single jazz song has some combination of those chord progressions, or at least some part of it uses those chord progressions. So I hope that helped. Feel free to ask any questions or suggest any common chord progressions yourself. And yeah, feel free to leave any comments and check out the description where I've given some more details around everything we've covered here. Thanks, guys.